Hello, and welcome to another magical conversation. I have good news, guys. I found a job and I'm so grateful for it. Is it my dream job? No. Is it the job that gives me financial stability and it's the people treat me nice and going to work is not that stressful? Yes, and that's all I wanted, honestly. I'm working in a restaurant in the kitchen, and the people are actually very nice, and that's something that always worries me when I go into a new job. It's because I think I have a lot of experiences in my past where people have not been the nicest to me in previous jobs. Unfortunately, I have a lot of experiences where people have not been the nicest to me, but I guess that's life, right? But I had a lot of jobs in the past where I was really mistreated and exploited. And for a lot of these experiences, I almost gained like this stress about finding a job and having work because I felt in so many jobs I was so like mistreated and even at some points traumatized. And I think I gained a lot of anxiety and stress in starting a new job. After a while, when like I know the people and I know what I'm supposed to be doing, and when I know how it's going to happen, basically when I have this illusion of controlling my mind, I find it easier to go to a job without much anxiety and stress. But the beginning is always scary for me because I'm like, hey, am I going to be like treated with respect? Am I going to be treated with dignity? And that's something that always scares me when I start a new job. Hey, but this is a job where people treat me nicely. They respect me. They are nice to me. It's not like amazing job, right? Because I work in a restaurant in the kitchen, but it's a job where, yeah, I'm well treated. I don't have to deal with customers because I am in the kitchen, which I love because also I've worked in customer service for so many years. And you really reach a point that, like, it's traumatizing to deal with some customers, right? There are some very mean, cruel customers, like the big narcissists and customers that come there just to like make your life a living hell. And I have a lot of stories of my past work experiences I'll share in the podcast later because I do have a lot of stories. But I'm very grateful that I found a job that, hey, is it physical demanding? Yes. But it's not like the type of physical demanding that is going to, like, for example, mess up my body. It's a bit of physically demanding, yes. But like people are nice. I get paid. I go there. It goes by quickly because it's also very busy. So I'm very grateful that this era of uncertainty is finished because during these past few months, not being able to get a job, right, you really go into your mind and fear really takes over. And I realize why I needed to go for this period of time, for this period of uncertainty and not knowing where, when, or where I'll be able to make my stream of income, right? Because my options are not many. My options is going back to a place of trauma. That's my only option here, really. So, in a lot of ways, I was scared because I have nothing to fall back on. I don't have like a good support system. I don't have people that are healthy and they respect me to fall back on. So, I'm really out here doing the best that I can for myself. And for me, the best that I can for myself is really just have some sort of human decency and dignity. Just really trying to avoid even more trauma than I already been through, even though the life is not always easy, right? We always have those difficulties. And to a certain degree, I can handle a certain amount of difficulty. And of course, I know I can handle more, but I'm just trying to protect myself from it. And I do understand why I needed to go through this period of unknown, of not being able to get a job. This was a period where I really looked into my fears and I looked back into my childhood and why I felt so scared and so fearful, right? And a lot of it, big lessons that I learned throughout it was, I think the main lesson that I learned was this need of external validation. I really look into myself and I realized that I put a lot of pressure on myself to try to prove people something, to try prove people wrong, to try to show people, hey, look at me. I'm not what you said I was. And I think I was putting this weight on myself very unconsciously, and I was not realizing that I was doing that. And during this period, I really looked to my need for external validation, and I set myself free from it, which made my life way easier. I felt way lighter in my body, and it was when I faced this needing external validation. That is when I faced it, I healed from it, and I released it. That's when I got a job. And I think in a lot of circumstances of life, I do believe that everything is happening for you, and a lot of it is not about looking for something on the outside world, is about looking into yourself and learning the lesson and facing how you are feeling and facing your fears, facing your emotions, being there for yourself during these hard emotions. And the healing journey really starts by parts. You start by facing a specific fear that leads to another specific fear, and then it's like a downward spiral. That's why I say healing is a downward spiral, because it's the root that is some specific pain or trauma that then leads you to repeat similar behaviors across your life without you even realizing it, really. And for you to go to the root, you have to go through the process of facing many fears, because it's basically the branches of that seed that is a trauma. And I really went through a lot of specific fears. I went through fears of not wanting to be alive. That's a big thing that I want to talk about in another episode. And when I say this, I don't want you guys to worry about it. It's just something that has been within me for a long time, and I did not even realize it, that I had this ideation for not being alive. And I think in this moment, I really faced that ideation and faced the root of it. Also, this is a moment where I was sober. For a long time in my life, I wasn't sober by or alcohol or gardening or other substances. This was the first time that I really decided, hey, I'm going to be sober for a long period of time and I'm going to try. And a big emotion that appeared when I decided to go sober was emotions of not wanting to be alive. And in a lot of ways, I connected my addiction issues to this feeling of not wanting to be alive, right? And I realized that for me, addiction and always numbing myself was a way to check out of reality, because reality was hard for me, because it was hard to live fully present in my reality, in my mind, in the life that I was living, right? It was hard to be fully present in the moment. And in a lot of ways, during this time that I faced a lot of fears and I faced them sober, I realized that fear of not wanting to be alive, and I really owed myself during that moment, because I forgot about it, honestly, but I reminded myself for the first time that I did not want to be alive. And it was like when I was 13. And yes, it was because I was really struggling in my household and I did not see another way out besides that. That's why I think I also use a lot of alcohol and substances to try to numb that feeling of presence, because being present in that moment, in that traumatic experience, was extremely hard for me. And my addiction issues it's not that I'm proud of them because I'm not, but in a lot of ways, I forgive myself because I think I really needed that at that moment. I really needed something to numb me because I realized that without these addictions, without these escapisms, I don't know if I would be alive today. I think in a lot of ways, alcohol and substances in that time, not now, uh, almost I have this perspective, almost saved my life. And I realize this is coming from a lot of trauma, a lot of hard experiences, a lot of not having many options, right? Now I understand that the life that I'm living now, that I'm out of that place, that I can start creating a healthier life for myself. I don't need to numb myself. Right now, I am safe enough to be present. But when I say this, is to really bring forgiveness to myself that going through addiction is not something that I'm proud of, not at all. Is it something that I wish I had avoided? Yes. But at that time, I did the best that I could with the best that I had. There was not a lot, right? I was in a very difficult position in my household, going through a lot of trauma. I had no resources. I just had to endure the trauma that I was living, and I had no way of getting out, right? So my only option at that time was to numb myself. And that option to numb myself in a lot of ways was to avoid this not being alive ideation. And during this time that I was sober and not being able to get a job, because not being able to get a job took out a lot of safety from me and took out a lot of my safety net, because my safety net is myself. Being sober during this time and having to face those feelings, I really was faced with this type of ideation. And I realized how much my addiction issues were coming from that. Because when I stay sober, I realized, wait, all this time I was ideating these concepts. I was not consciously, because I think through addiction, I numb myself and I rejected this idea and I suppressed this trauma and this pain. But when I got sober, it came out, and I remember, oh, that's why I started my addiction. That's when my addiction started. That's when alcohol and substances started, because I could not at the time live with my reality. I could not at the time be present in my reality. And I brought a lot of forgiveness to myself, not only for addiction, but also not wanting to be alive. Because I think we have, again, we victim blame a lot as society, right? There's always a victim that is the responsible and faulty one, right? And I think I also blame myself a lot through this ideation of not wanting to be alive. And I realized that I was doing the best that I could with the best that I had. I did not have a favorable reality. I did not have resources. I had nothing. And I was doing the best that I could to survive the trauma. And indeed led me to a better place, right? And it did brought me here, far away from that place, in a place when I can start building up safety and start and continue this healing journey and face my emotions, face my pain, face my trauma. So at the end of the day, I'm forgiving myself for everything that I am, because I was dealt bad cards and I did the best that I could at it. And I think I actually did pretty well with what I had. That was only really myself. And for the most time, I did not even add myself, right? So I brought a lot of forgiveness during this time. Those were like the two main trauma pain that I think I needed to look during this time. And I knew that, for example, when Saturn left retrograde, the things will be better. And I think Saturn left retrograde in I might be mistaken, or the 15th of November or the 25 or something like that. And I got the interview for this job on the 11 of 11 at 11 hours. So I really know this was like a prayer answered because again, I'm very spiritual. So I like to take note of the synchronicities and these like little small details. And in my intuition during this period, I knew everything was going to be all right, but still I needed to face my fears. I needed to face my pain because I think a lot in life is not about having a solution outside of you. It was not about getting the job itself. It was about me facing this pain of not wanting to be alive and seeking external approval, because I do believe that the answers mostly lie within you. And when you face your pain and when you embrace your pain, that's when the outside world responds. At least that's my experience of life. That's how it works for me. So I took this time of the unknown, of fear, of a lot of old pain being brought up to learn my lessons. And this, I think, is a really like a good trick in life. That is when life challenges you and when you are faced with obstacles or an undesirable situation, sit with the emotions that it brings to you, embrace the pain that it brings to you, because I think that ultimately is the answer. The answer is inside of yourself, not outside of yourself. And at the end of the day, I'm grateful because being grateful for me, I'm the type of person that says thank you for everything, right? And I'm very thankful and I'm very grateful because for me, being grateful, it's really a coping mechanism, right? Because I cannot look into my life without gratitude, because I feel like if I look into my life without gratitude, I'll just like be miserable, really. Because if I look to my life objectively and without this gratitude perspective and learning the lessons and learning how to overcome it and taking the best that I can, if I look without all of those things, I just find a miserable life. And this is a way for me to cope with my reality and for me to live a happier life. Because even though of all the difficulties that I face in my life, am I a sad person? Yes. But I also think I'm a very happy person. I think your capacity of sadness is your capacity of happiness. And the sadder you feel also means the happier you feel. And this is not a black and white. For me, they are together. That yes, am I a sad person? Do I cry a lot? Do I have to face a lot of pain? Absolutely. But I also think I'm a very happy person in the sense I'm very joyful. I take the best out of every moment. And this is something that I'm realizing by going to work, and I go to work and I don't even like realize that I'm doing this. But imagine they play music and I sing, I dance a little bit while I'm working, and people really enjoy that. And they say, like, it brings them like, it lights up the place, right? It lights up the mood of everyone. And it's like they find it good that somebody is there like bringing up the mood. And I noticed that in myself as well. Like, yes, I do struggle, I do have a lot of trauma, I do cry a lot, I do go through a lot of difficulties and obstacles and traumatic moments, but at the same time, I'm a really joyful person that takes out the best in any situation. And that's again something that I'm grateful for all these difficulties, is that I learned to turn it around. I learned to always turn things around. And I really do this as a coping mechanism to be able to survive and to be able to create a better life for myself. And I think this is a skill that I did not fully realize that I have, but I do have. I am a very joyful person. I'm a person that doesn't need a lot to be happy because I did not have a lot, right? I have nothing. Like all of it I had was trauma, but even in the trauma, there were a lot of happy moments there. Even though there was also a lot of sad and painful moments, there were also a lot of happy moments because I choose uh, to be happy in it, because I choose to do the best with it. I choose to look at the lesson and I choose to overcome it. And looking at the answer and being grateful is not about denying the pain, because I think there is a mixed conception here that I don't agree with. That is like, when you go through pain and you hear things like you should be grateful, you should be happy, you should take the best out of the situation, there are two ways that I look at this. You can do that while denying the pain, and you can do that while embracing the pain. I really believe the healthiest option is embracing the pain and still bring out the gratitude and still being grateful about it. This is kind of a perspective of, I think is majority accepted, and I think is very accepted in this like mental health community, healing community, that is to deny pain, right? Because happiness is a choice, yes, but choosing happiness is not denying sadness. Choosing to be grateful is not denying being frustrated or angry. It's quite the opposite. It's embracing your sadness, embracing your frustrations, embracing your anger, embracing the moments that suck, and saying, yes, I'm in pain, I'm suffering, yes, but at the same time, I can find the joy in it and I can be grateful for it without denying the pain. And this is really something that I believe in and I try to portray through this podcast, Laurinda Landia, and all of my content. That is, it's not about denying the pain. It's about embracing the pain. And the way to embrace the pain is also to find joy in it and to find gratitude in it without trying to deny it. Because I think denying pain and denying the trauma and trying to escape it only brings issues. And I think it's about being there for when you're sad and also being there for when you're happy. Like accepting yourself unconditionally, accepting yourself as you are right now without trying to change it. If you're having a bad day, you are having a bad day. It's okay to have a bad day. If you want to cry and if you are being faced with all this pain and all this trauma, face it. It's okay to have days where you are not so joyful and so happy and so da. And when you are happy, embrace it as well. It's about embracing all states of yourself without denying any of them and without rejecting any of them. Because in a lot of ways, I think when you reject sadness, you also reject happiness. Because if you don't accept yourself in one state, you won't accept yourself in another state. Like in your mind, there is no distinguish. It's just lack of self acceptance, right? And this is something that I really try to portray with my content, that it's not about denying pain, it's about embracing the pain and being there for yourself while you are feeling the pain, being there for yourself in the moments that are hard, in the moments where you don't want to be, being there for yourself to support yourself, accept yourself, see yourself, and love yourself unconditionally through all circumstances of life, because all circumstances of life are yourself and it is you, and all of you is deserving of love, not just parts. And this is something that I did during this period of uncertainty, because in my body, my intuition, I know everything is going to work out. I always know that everything is going to work out, because life has proven that to me so many times. And again, I'm beyond grateful, I'm beyond blessed, and the love that I have for that and the gratitude that I have for that is beyond my capacity to communicate it, honestly. Because in my life, I took so many leaps of faith, faith. I step into the unknown so many times because I had no other option in my mind, right? Or I was going to settle for a life of continuous trauma, or I was going to step into the unknown and try something new without assurance of nothing, without knowing if it was going to work out, without knowing if I was going to make it. But every time that I did that, I made it. Somehow, unexpectedly, I had what I needed to have when it was necessary. I had enough. And this concept of enough, because during this time I've been healing a lot of money related trauma, because for me money related trauma was really this lack of freedom, right? Not having the freedom to choose something healthy for yourself, not having the freedom to choose respect and dignity because you had nothing and you had to be in an environment that was unhealthy for you and you could not escape it because I had no resources, right? And during this time, I also faced a lot of money related issues. And for me, money is just a physical manifestation of a deeper emotional state that for me is freedom, is security, is this concept of control, right? And during this time, I really went to the concept of enough. And this is a concept that I learned through reading The Psychology of Money, great book. I talk about it quite often because actually, when I read The Psychology of Money, I was really struggling with my concept of money and I was really struggling with fear of lacking money and fear of not having enough, right? And I think growing up, we are really sold this idea that what you should achieve in life is this crazy amounts of wealth. And that's when you're going to be happy. And that's when you're going to get all you want. And I'm not denying that for some people. But for me, having this idea that I only be happy when I have like these crazy amounts of money and when I have these crazy amounts of health is putting a lot of pressure on myself because in reality, most of us are not going to have that, right? And it does not mean that we're going to be unhappy about it. It does not mean that we are not going to be happy with enough. This is where I learned the concept of enough, that being wealthy is not about having extremes amounts of money. Being wealthy is about having enough and knowing what's enough for you. And enough can be smaller and bigger, depends on the person, really, depends on their needs and what they need. Right now, enough for me, and again, enough can always change because you always grow, upgrade, and you always expand yourself. So your concept of enough changes across time. But this concept of enough is a concept of I'm happy with this. Do I welcome more? Yes. Do I need more than this? No. It's about being happy where you are and being happy with enough and being happy within yourself and being satisfied within yourself. Because I think for me, this idea that you should achieve crazy amounts of money, it was a lot of pressure on myself. Like, what if I don't make it? What if this job is not good enough? What if I cannot find a good job? And I was stressing with this concept of extreme amounts of wealth, that is what I should aim for. And I realized, wait, for me to be happy, what do I need? Right. And for me, I don't think I'm asking for too much, really. For me, my sense of enough is being financial independence, meaning that I don't need to rely on other people because, again, I don't have much people to rely on. So for me, being financially independent is really making sure that I'm good. I don't need for now. Hey, this can change across life. I'm not saying that I'm not going to change. Probably I will, right? But for me right now, enough is be able to pay my rent, being able to pay my food. From time to time, being able to buy like some clothes, maybe go for a coffee from time to time. But that's enough for me. I don't need crazy amounts of wealth right now. I don't need a great house. I don't need a great car. I don't even know how to drive. I don't need branded clothing. Right now, I'm good with just paying my rent, having a place to sleep with, having food, being able to buy clothes when I need them, and being able to like buy a coffee and enjoy myself in a coffee place with a good book. That for me is my concept of enough. And I think defining this concept of enough was really necessary for me and fulfilling, because I realized that, okay, this is all I need right now to be happy. I'm happy now. This is attainable. I can be happy on the now and not delay my happiness for this crazy goal of so much money that probably most of us will not be able to achieve, right? And that's why I see money as freedom or prison, because you can be a prisoner of money with not much money and with a lot of money. Is your perspective on it, right? And hey, I'm not denying poverty. I've been poor, and I do think we need a certain amount of money to survive. We need a certain amount of money to live. A certain amount of money is necessary, right? But beyond that concept of enough, we can be our prisoners or be set free by money, right? And I think in a lot of ways, a lot of people that do have a lot of money but are still obsessed with it, that nothing is enough, that they have always to reach the next level, right? For me, I see them as a prisoner of money, right? And I want to look at money as freedom and not as a prison. I want to look at money and be grateful for it and not give me anxiety when I look into my bank account and say, oh, I have enough. I'm grateful that this month I can do this and I can do that. I'm grateful that I have a savings account. I'm grateful that I'm capable of doing the things that I need to take care of myself. So I think also defining and healing this concept of money, because for me, of course, I grew up with a lot of money insecurity, food insecurity, lacking a lot of resources, not only physically, but also emotionally, honestly. I think if I add emotional fulfillment, and only if I add like lacking money, I don't think it will be half as hard, really, because I really see again the interaction with the outside world as first a belief system, first a perspective of the world, and first a certain type of emotion about it. So healing this concept of money and being grateful for what I have now, because right now, again, if I can pay my bills, pay my food, enjoy myself from time to time, in my mind I am rich. Why? Because not only I can do those things physically, but I do have safety. I do have choice and agency over my life. I don't need to be in toxic environments. I don't need to rely on toxic people to survive. I can choose healing. I can choose mental health. Do I have the money to see a therapist? No. But do I have the safety within me to face my fears? Yes. And coming from a lot of lack, I feel rich with probably for what a lot of people see as not that much. But for me, I feel rich by it because I'm living a life of safety. I don't have to interact with toxic people. I mean, you always have to interact with toxic people, right? But I can keep my distance from toxic people and toxic environments, and I can choose to look into myself, face my fears, bring love to myself. And that's the only thing you need is safety and time and space, right? And that's for me, it's invaluable. Me sitting with my emotions and learning to accept myself and love myself is invaluable. And for me, this is my definition of being rich right now. Again, it can always change, and I think it's super acceptable and healthy for your perspective and you yourself to change, right? Because you change and your perspective of the world changes, right? And that's the norm, that's normal. And I think right now I can finally rest and say, hey, I have money to pay my bills. the work that I do. Is it my dream job? No. Again, me working in a kitchen in a restaurant, probably a lot of people will be very like not fulfilled by it and not satisfied with it. And it's not that I'm fulfilled by it because I'm not. But for now, it is giving me what I need. And I'm not complaining. I'm grateful for it, especially because the work environment is not toxic. And that's a big part of it because people are respectful and people are nice. Because going back to my work experiences, I had a lot of traumatizing work experiences with like toxic bosses, the narcissist boss, right? That really tears you down and exploits you and uses you and really affects or affected my mental health. And I think this is also very cultural because I think the country I was born at, Portugal, I think exploitation is the norm, especially if you come from not so rich backgrounds, if you come from like lack, and if you come from not having that much money, you don't have many options, right? You take what you get because that's all the options that you got, right? And I think throughout it, I went through a lot of jobs that yes were very traumatizing that I still think about till this day. When I think about, I'm like, oh. And now I'm living in a completely different country, the completely different set of beliefs that they do value quality of work here. They do value respect and they do value mental health. And I think the perspective about work and about life and almost about humanization and about work-life balance is completely different. That's one of the reasons. I have many reasons, right? But that's one of the reasons why I also moved here, was because I knew the quality and work-life balance will be better than it was in Portugal. And hey, it's not perfect. I have jobs here where I left because I was mistreated, because I was again being mistreated by people, being disrespected, like people just going against me without no reason. This happens to me a lot. People go against me without no reason. Like I'm just out here trying to be kind and compassionate. And I guess a lot of people have a lot of issues with it. And I don't mind people seeing me in whatever way they see me. That's fine. What I mind is them getting out of their way to basically traumatize me, to make my life living hell, to call me names, to treat me poorly. That's what my issue here is. Because you can dislike me, fine. But like when you take time out of your life and take energy out of your life to try to cause me harm, I need to live in that moment because I realized throughout my work experiences that money does not pay for my mental health because the jobs that I'm working barely pay for my rent, my food. I'm barely like gaining survive. I'm not talking about this job, I'm talking about previous jobs, but I barely gained to survive. And then I have trauma that I have to deal for years to come. And then I have experiences that I need to face for years to come because I was in like an exploitative job with toxic people that traumatize me and use me and exploited me. And now I have to sit with these emotions. And I barely have money for therapy. I don't have money for therapy. And I realized that it's not worth it. Mental health is invaluable to me. Mental health, safety, healing has no price. It is invaluable. My mind, my life experiences, my trauma is not paid. I'm not going to be in a place to be constantly traumatized just to gain enough money to survive. Not worth it, right? And I had like one experience in the country that I was in, and it was not even that bad. I have experiences worse. It was bad, yes. Was it that bad? No. But also, I'm comparing here to a lot of traumatic experiences in my past. I think my definition is of bad it's really extreme because of my life experiences, right? But nothing is perfect. No country is perfect. There is always outliers. But in general, this is a country that values quality of work and like respect for human beings and being treated like with some sort of respect and human dignity. That's all I'm asking for. Some sort of respect and human decency and dignity. I'm not hoping for like this crazy wow 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 job, this crazy wow 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 lifestyle. I'm just hoping to pay my bills, of human respect and human dignity. Just that. Just go in, do my job, don't stress too much about it, just do it, leave, get my money, and create some sort of like safety within me and quality of life. So I'm really grateful that I got this job, and thank you to everyone that send me good vibes and good energy to get a job. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you for everyone that was here during this process of the unknown and this process of fear. Because coming back, going to this podcast and talking about how I feel, my experiences, is really comforting because most of the time I do this alone, and that's fine. But to be able to have a place where I don't need to hide, where don't need to put on a mask, where I can just be truthful and honest and just express myself. It brought me a lot of comforts. And I think this episode is an episode that I'll look back on when I'm fearing in my life, when I'm stepping into the unknown and I don't know if things are going to work out. I think this is an episode that I'm going to look back like, hey, Laurinda, things work out. Everything is going to be okay. It might not be now, but somehow it's going to turn out all right. And I think this is an episode that I'll look back when I am in times of the unknown and fear to reassure myself, yes, things do work out. Because I always knew that things were going to work out, but hey, fear takes over. And it's normal for fear to take over. And that's the purpose of it, is for us to face our fears and face our emotions and to embrace them and love them, right? So I'm very grateful that the unknown is known now and I feel safer, more stable, more secure. And today I wanted to do a continuation of my last episode of my father. I kind of wanted to dedicate these episodes and probably like next two episodes to describe my relationship with love, with romantic relationships, and how my father's trauma shaped these dynamics within me and really affected a lot of my life. At the moment, I was unconscious about it. Now, looking back, after facing it and healing from it, hey, I'm not fully healed. We are never fully healed, right? But basically, after accepting, facing, and loving those moments in my life, I can look to it with some sense and with some conscious awareness. But at the time, I had no conscious awareness because I was just living through trauma. Trigger warning for this story. This story talks about SA. So basically, in the last episode, I explained how my father groomed me. And this process of grooming with a G at the beginning, I always have to filter my words and say words that are a bit different because I cannot fully say the words because of YouTube. This process of being groomed by my father really made me the perfect victim because in a lot of ways I was so desensitized to toxic behavior and it was so normalized to me to be treated and exploited in this way that not only did I saw it as normal, I saw it as what love looked like, right? Because I think in a lot of ways we gain our concepts of love, love for others, love for ourselves, connection through our relationship with our parents. That kind of saying that you kind of date your father, or if you are a man, you kind of date your mother. It's not that you literally date them, right? But you date like almost archetypes of them, right? It is kind of true. I think when you don't face that relationship, you mimic that relationship. So I mimicked a lot of that definition of love that is really not love. Like now I cannot even call it love. At the time, I thought that is what love looked like. And growing up with my parents, right, they are narcissists. So I think narcissism is love, right? So I'm very susceptible. I can say this word. I can say it because I cannot say successful. I think I was very attracted to narcissists, because for me that is what love looked like, because it is what was taught to me in childhood, because my parents were narcissists and they treated me like a supply for them, like a tool, like an object. My father ruined me, so I was very desensitized to a lot of adult experiences at a very young age and adult behavior at a very young age, that it really set me up for more trauma, right? It set me up for more disaster. It was a perfect recipe for me to be used and exploited by other predators, basically. So my trauma with s.a'd and my story of s.a'd is very interconnected and very related with love and romantic relationships. And this is kind of like, when I look back, I like, whoa, so crazy, but so fascinating at the same time, how like the human mind works and how behaviors work. And this really taught me a lot about trauma, human behaviors, how like not facing and not dealing with trauma and pain basically replicates it in your outside life without you even really realizing it, right? But this was extremely difficult to go through. This was extremely traumatizing, very difficult to go through. And basically, again, this is a story. I'm not proud of any of this. I'm very shameful. I'm extremely humiliated. I wish I did not have to go through this, but I did. It taught me a lot. And the reason why I share these stories is not only for myself, for me to like set myself free, be authentic, be like, hey, this is me. Am I perfect? No. Is my life perfect? Not like at all. But is this me at my core? Absolutely. Not only am I doing this to create a more authentic life, because I feel like if I'm not truthful about my experiences, I'm not being able to create a life that is truthful to me. I think for me to be able to create truth, I need to speak my truth, right? Not only am I doing it for that, there is also another aspect that I think is also me speaking about these things. People that also been through these things can find a lot of comfort and clarity in it, and they can find that they are not alone, because again, victims, a lot of time they are blamed, they are shamed, they are silenced, and we go through this when it feels like alone, and we feel like we are the only ones that are going through this, and we feel like it's us against the world, right? And this is also to bring healing to people that have been through this, and to say, hey, I'm sorry that you've been through this. You did not deserve to go through this. It's okay to feel this pain. And it's okay to be the person that you are today and to carry this trauma and to carry this pain because of what has happened to you, right? It's also a way for me to bring to light a lot of issues that I think a lot of times we carry in silence. That is an aspect of it. But another aspect of why I share these stories is, a lot of times people ask me, how do you know what you know? Like when I talk in the land about healing and all about these concepts and perspective of life, a lot of times people ask me, how do you know what you know? And a lot of times people think like I read a lot of books, which, hey, if you think that I'm that intellectual, thank you. And I do read some books, but these perspectives and this wisdom and this knowledge came from experience. And when people ask me that, for me to explain to people how I know the things I know, I need to explain my whole life. I need to explain all the experiences, all the trauma, all the cycles that led me here. And through experiencing all these traumas, all these cycles, I also learn how to overcome them and how to rise above it and turn them into your favor, to not be something that continuously puts you down, but something that builds you up, right? So me sharing my story is also like kind of filling in the blanks of why I speak about these things, why I have these perspectives of life, where did I come up with these ideas and beliefs and these perspectives of life. So me speaking my story, a big part of it is also explaining how I know the things that I know, is because I've been through them. So today I wanted to share my story of my first love. And when I say first love, really try like in quotes, because it's really just trauma. It's not like I consider at that time love, but it's really not love, right? But when I say this, like the first time I fell in love, right? My first, I guess, like, yeah, falling in love with someone, right? Okay, so the background of this is I'm coming from a narcissist home. I've been, and I still am, being groomed by my father. My concept of love is extremely toxic. It is a concept of narcissism, or basically love bombing, devaluation, isolation, diminishing, and all of that constitutes narcissism. But it's also very connected with the physical intimacy. And those two, in my mind, they came together at a very young age. So the first time I fell in love, I'm 13. And basically, I go to this place that is after school. It was kind of this place where you go after school to kind of study more. It's like a study center. And this study center in of itself is so traumatic. I have so many stories about it. Like the woman that ran that place was absolutely crazy, toxic, like crazy, crazy, crazy. Like that is a Pandora box in of itself. And I went to this place since I was 6 to, I think I was like 15 or 14 or something. Because again, my parents, and I think this was more my mother only allowed me to be in toxic places. And I think she did this for me to not realize what was wrong in my household, because if I was going through a certain experience in my household and everything that I saw on the outside was similar to that experience, I will not see how wrong what I was going through was. I only really started to see how wrong and how cruel my experiences were when I fully left Portugal and I moved to this country and I completely separated myself from that environment. That's only when I started to process, oh, this is not normal. This is not okay. This is not healthy. What I've been through was not joyful or like family or it was trauma. It was traumatic, right? And I think my mother only allowed me to be in places that were as toxic as my household, because that way I'll have no comparison. And for me, what I was going through at home, it was normal because it's everything I know. Even outside of my household and my family environment, that's everything that I'm being faced with. So I think this type of toxic behaviors are normal, right? So I'm in this very extremely toxic study center that I go after school, and I go there to study, right? And this is basically a study center full of kids. Basically, like a bunch of kids will go there. It was near like my school when I was growing up. A bunch of kids go there, and they have kind of teachers. There is so much trauma from this place that this needs to be a whole episode, honestly. Like, I'm telling this story and I'm being reminded of this place, and I'm like, I'm facing demons here. um, so this is a study place with a bunch of kids, right? And I think I was 14. And there was this guy that I think he was 2 years older. I think he was 14 or 15. And basically, I see now a narcissist. Love bombing, devaluation. Basically, like at the start, they give you the world. They say all the things like, we're going to do this, we're going to be that, we're going to like live this amazing love story. And they're like, paint this picture of love, shower with attention, right? Like you are being giving like this image of like this almost book like love, our like perception of love like in the media, that I think our perception of love in the media is also toxic, but like this wow love, right? So this guy like slowly starts paying me attention, and hey, I'm a very traumatized insecure child, very insecure, very traumatized. Any attention that they pay to me, I'm like, I fall, because all that I'm being treated is badly. All that I'm being treated is with insults and with evaluation and with mockery. So anyone that is kind of nice to me, just like a slightly of nice, I'm like, yes. So this kid, I think he also was very traumatized with a life story that I'm not going into it because it's his life story, not mine. He showed me like a tiny bit of attention, not even nothing special really, just like a tiny bit of attention, and I was like fall head over heels obsessed. Obsession for me now, I realize when you are obsessed with someone and you cannot stop thinking about that person, is a trauma response. I realize that's not love, right? But at the time I was 14, I was young, I knew nothing. The issue here is that he was like an F boy at the time. Okay, F boy. He's like 15, but very dating multiple people at once. And he was also coming on to my best friend at the time. And again, at this time, I don't have friends. I have people that treat me badly, and I call friends because that's all I know to be of love. So this girl, basically, we were friends since we were very young, like two. And she was like my neighbor, not the neighbor in my building, like she had a building like in front of me. And yeah, we are neighbors by one street, but I call her my neighbor. And that's the reason why we were friends, is because we live in close proximity. And imagine this quote unquote friendship, quote unquote, right? She was my best friend really because she lived close to me and because my mother allowed me to be with her. Because why? She was also like a very mean kid. I think it happens a lot. A lot of kids are very mean. Jesus, like kids can be really, really mean and hurtful and cruel. And like she was the type of person that when we were together, kind of okay, it wasn't that bad. But for example, if we were in front of other people, especially guys, like she would really make an effort to mock me, bully me, diminish me. Basically, like when we were together, like she didn't treat me well, but like she didn't treat me that bad. But when we were with other people, she treated me really poorly. Like she liked to use me as a punching bag, basically. Like she liked to put me down to make her big up, you feel me? She liked to put me down to make her feel and look a certain way, right? And we are kids, right? I'm not judging myself or her that much. because I mean, we are kids going through life very traumatized, right? But at the time, I saw her as a best friend. And when that guy, that teenager, started to give me like a silver of attention, I became obsessed. He was doing the same to my best friend, a quote unquote best friend at the time, that was my neighbor. And the thing is, and this is something that I have a lot of guilt of and a lot of shame, and this guilt and shame really created a very toxic cycle in my life. Basically, the guy was more like, people knew, it's not that they were dating, but people like knew that they were together, but people did not know that he was also coming on to me. So basically, I was like, in a very child teenage manner. I even feel bad because we were so young, and I don't want to blame these kids because we are kids, right? But in adult terms, I was basically the side chick, but like very kid, I don't blame any of these people. I don't blame myself. We were children. Basically, I was the girl on the low, right? And I felt super guilty and super bad about it because my best friend was basically dating him. And the thing is, even though that she treated me very badly, she was still my friend, and I would still call her my friend, right? So I felt a lot of guilt for it, and I never told her my feelings for this guy because at the time, imagine, I'm feeling guilty a lot because I'm basically the side chick to my best friend, right? I don't know how to explain this like in teenager children type of thing. But basically, this is the terms that I'm using just because to explain this story. Basically, they were dating, and the guy was flirting with me, and I was obsessed with him. I couldn't stop thinking about him. Like everything that I thought was him, I was obsessed, 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 like always thinking, always thinking. And I could not break away from him. It was basically a trauma bond. Now that I realized, back at the time, I'm a kid, I don't know any of this stuff. I don't know what is happening to me. Basically, I'm trauma bonded to this guy because he did the old narcissist thing. That is very normal. This happened to me until adulthood. This was not my first cycle of this. I had many cycles of this. And it's still hard in adulthood to break for these cycles, right? Basically, the guy did the love bombing, and I became obsessed with love bombing, and he paid me no attention, right? But I was still obsessed with him, and my best friend at the time was dating him, and I felt so guilty about it. Like I could not live with myself. I carry so much guilt for that, and I carry so much shame, even though that she was not that great a person to me. In my mind, she was still my friend and the person that I am. And I realize this now, that I cannot be disloyal. I cannot not be honest, because this eats me alive. And this ate me alive for many years. Like this thing when I was 14, like this, I carry this guilt for years for what I did to her. Basically, what I did to her is, I'm very ashamed of this. Okay, so remember, I'm 13. My father had groomed me, so I was very desensitized to physical, intimate relationships. And I think this is the normal. I think having physical, intimate relationships are normal. I don't know what consent looks like. I don't know what I'm doing. I know nothing. But because of the rooming that I was going through with my father, I think that being physical, having physical, intimate relationships is normal. even at a young age, even without knowing nothing really, even without knowing consent, I think is normal. So one day, this guy invites me to his house. And I go there with a friend. Oh my God, I'm so embarrassed of this. I go with this guy's house with a friend. And imagine I go with a friend because, of course, my mother will never let me be at the guy's house, right? Of course. So I have to lie to my mother to say I'm going to a friend. And that friend lived like near that guy. So that's the reason why I went to his house with my friend because that's the only way I could have done it, right? So I go to his house with a friend and basically I'm very ashamed of this. I'm really like to try to tell this story, and I have a lot of shame and guilt about this because, like, I'm 14 and I feel a lot of guilt around this. Yeah, basically, uh, some things happened. Not full, but some things happened, right? Uh, yeah, some almost intimate physical relationships, but not the lead up to it, right? I'm very young, I'm 14, I don't even know what I'm doing, but I've been so desensitized to it, and I think it's so normal that I almost think in my mind, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And I'm 14, I have no idea what is happening, but I'm just going with it because, yeah, like in my mind at the time, I thought these were almost the expectations. Like this, yeah, I thought this was normal. That's all, like the way that I can put it. And I think later, in another time where I was not with my friends, I think I went to his house. I don't know how. I think I lied to my parents again. I don't know, something. And I went to his house again, and I almost lost my virginity at 14. And we stopped before it happened, like really, really happened. And I remember I made a promise to myself, this will only happen like when you are 18. And I don't know why I thought, okay, 18, maybe I have some sort of consciousness, some sort of, I'm more grown up in my mind. And I think again that happened because I was so desensitized to this, to physical intimate relationships due to the trauma that I was going from my father. I thought this was something that I was supposed to do. I thought this was the normal. I thought this was the expectations. And I'm very glad that I did not fully went through it and it did not fully happen because I was not absolutely ready at the time. I'm 13. I was far from ready. I was far from even like having a concept truly of what is happening, right? So yeah, that happens. And I feel so guilty about it because this guy is basically dating my best friend. And I've done this with this guy. And the guilt absolutely consumes me. Like, and this honestly was not even about the guy. It was about the love that I had for my friends. Even though that she was not like really a friend, I saw her as a friend. And what I've done to her, and again, like, I know we were kids, we were children, like, I kind of forgive myself, but at the time I carried extreme guilt for what I've done to her. It was not even what I've done to myself or to the guy. I don't even care about myself or the guy. I was so guilty for what I've done to her. And this guilt has a lot of meaning. Why? This guilt led me to my first essay. Okay. So I feel so guilty for what I've done, and I separate from this guy. Even though I'm still obsessing over him, my mind is still like completely trauma bonded, obsessive, like art eyes in my eyes, like completely like my mind is taken over by this, trauma bonded basically. I have separated from this guy because the guilt I could not live with myself for what I've done to my best friends. At the time, still in this study center, so much trauma, Jesus. Basically, my best friend was hanging out with another teenager. I think he was 16 at the time, I think. And this other guy was very also comfortable with physical, intimate relationships. I guess that's the way to put it. And basically, imagine in this study center, we had like a bathroom in the study center that you can only open from the outside. So, for example, if you enter the bathroom and close the door, you could not open from like the inside of the bathroom. You need to get someone to open from outside of the bathroom. And basically, I'm in the study center with my best friend and this like other guy. And basically, they shove me to this bathroom with that 16-year-old, the other guy, the other teenager. Again, not blaming anyone, no shame. I'm just sharing my story. I understand that we're all kids and teenagers and very traumatized. Please not bring shame to anyone or guilt. I'm just like sharing what I've been through because it's an important part of my story. So basically, I'm shoved into this bathroom. That's one, it's dark. There is no light because it's not like a function bathroom because you cannot even open it from the inside. So it's dark. I'm locked there with this other guy, this teenager, 16-year-old. And basically, my best friend from the outside the door tells me, I only let you out if you make out with this guy. And I'm there, I'm panicking. It's dark. I'm like in the bathroom closed with this guy, you feel me? Like this guy is like close to me, my body. He's trying to hug me. And I am, panicking. So I'm panicking, and my quote unquote best friend from outside the door tells me that the only way she lets me out if it's I make out with this guy. Mm. So against my consent, I kiss him. And it's so like gross to like look back and think about. Yeah. Very gross, very disgusting, okay? So yeah, we make out and I tell her, hey, we made out, and he confirms it, and she opens the door, right? And this, I think, again, my memory is not the best, so I might have some details lost in translation here. This was the initiation of this essay process. Again, I'm not thinking that this is crazy and out of the norm because I've been roomed from my father. So I think this is kind of normal, and I've normalized this behavior, unfortunately. So things start to escalate from there. Like this guy will touch me without my consent, like touch my body, grab my ass, you feel me? Those type of things. Again, I don't think this is too out of the norm because this has been extremely normalized to me as normal, as my body being an object of pleasure and as a commodity. There was one time that we were at the study center and they shoved me to a room without people. Basically, it is my best friend at the time and this guy that I had kissed in the bathroom. Basically, they put me to the floor, shoved me like kind of to the floor. So I'm laying down on the floor, and my best friend is holding down my legs, and I have my arms like this, like up in the floor, and the guy is basically putting his knees and legs like in my forearms, so like I cannot move. Basically, I'm entrapped on the floor. And this guy that is on top of me, the one that I kissed in the bathroom, basically puts his hands down my shirt and grabs, my chest. That's the best way that I can describe it. The memory that I have of it is again super disgusting. This guy is basically s.a'd me, and I remember like I can only see his body, right? Imagine what I have on top of my head because the guy's legs in my forearms, and yes, I have a view. Not only I have a view to his, yeah. I have a view to his face, kinda, and he's really like grunting, like disgusting, 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 disgusting. I cannot emphasize the disgustment, okay? And the guy basically takes out the end of my chest, and he went under my bra and he fully touched me, essayed me. And he was going to put the end in the other place, in my crotch. And I started to panic, and I somehow like started to panic and started to move my body, and I could get out of the ground. And basically what my best friend told me is that if you tell anyone about what happened, I'm gonna say that you wanted it. Basically, she told me if I told anybody what happened in that moment, she would tell everyone that I asked for it and I wanted it, and that I was a promiscuous woman. SLUT, And I kept quiet because I was ashamed. This was the first time that I was s.a'd. At the time, I knew it was wrong, but not fully, because I'm very desensitized to this. And I think to a certain extent, this is like the normalcy of life, right? Due to what I went through my father, right? Another aspect of this that I think happens a lot with victims, because we are so blamed for what happens to us, that we internalize that blame, that we say, yes, we have control, and yes, it was our fault. And I think this not only is a projection from the outside world, especially victims. You talk about being essayed, they blame you. It's your fault. You caused this. You had control over the situation. It's your fault that you went through this, or because you did something wrong, or you should have done something you didn't do, or because it was what you were wearing, what you were saying, what you were doing. There is always a justification for victims to be blamed. That is an aspect of it that I think I have internalized a lot of the blame from the outside, because again, since I was a kid, my body was perceived as an object of pleasure, and somehow in my very little distorted minds I thought I had internalized it, and I thought, yes, my function is to society, and my function as a woman is to be an object of pleasure even without consent. So I know it was wrong in my body, but I did not fully understand it. And I think, again, it's not that crazy what I'm going through at the time because I was so normalized to this type of behavior. I was a perfect victim because I was already roomed for this type of situations. Another aspect of this that I think I went through a lot is that not only I internalized the projection of others of victim blame, like others people saying it was your fault because what you did, what you said, what were you wearing type things when you are s.a'd. And they're all like, I don't even needed to say it because that was the whole culture around me. I just saw people and women being victim blamed for going through trauma, being victim blamed for being SA, being victim blamed for everything and anything, being objectified constantly, being seen as an object of pleasure, right? And this was so surrounding me. That was an aspect of it. But another aspect, I think, as victims, it can be really hard to be okay with not having control. I think a lot of times, at least me, myself, I think I blamed a lot of my essay on myself because it is easier for me to say that I have blame. Because for me to say that I have blame, it's saying to myself that I control than to accept that I don't have control. And that these things happened and they are out of your control. And when I say that to myself, I need to accept this can happen at any time, unexpectedly, without control, right? And this is a journey that I had to go through in my own healing of being essayed and being objectified and all of those things. I had to come to terms that it is out of my control. It is scary, absolutely, but it was not my fault. No matter how ruined I was, no matter how objectified I was, it was not my fault, right? But I think at the time I blame myself because that also gave me some sense of power and control, because blaming myself is saying, hey, it's under my control, it won't happen again, right? If something is under my control, it won't happen again because I'll have control over. I didn't. And I think I went through a lot of years of being essayed, and I think that really taught me and showed me I have no control. It did not matter what I did, what I didn't do, what I wore, I was just seen as an object of pleasure without me consenting to anything. And in my mind at the time, I victim blame myself, and I gave myself this control and agency. And I think victim blaming myself was also a way to cope, because it was really hard for me to live in a reality that is the reality that I don't have control over bad things happening to me. They just happened and I don't have control over them. And I just have to accept that and be there for myself through the hard times, right? This is a lesson that it took me many years to learn. But at the time, a way to cope was to stay out of control. And I think the justification that I gave in my mind to have control is through the guilt, in the sense that I felt so guilty for what I had done to my best friend, to the other guy, right? That she was dating, and I, yeah, did things with him. I felt so guilty through that I kind of transfer that guilt and use that guilt as justification in my mind to cope with that experience as I deserve to go through this. I deserve this essay because I did something wrong to my best friends and I deserve to suffer because of it. I did something wrong to her, and what happened here, I thought again, this is is a way to cope with trauma, right? It's a way to cope with these experiences that are not easy, especially in the mind of a child that has no conscious, yeah, no understanding of what is happening to her. Things are just happening to me, it feels like, and I'm just like trying to survive it. At the time, I justified it by I deserve to go through this because I did something wrong to my best friend. So it was kind of in my mind a way to balance the scales, to be fair. And again, this is just a justification for me to cope with my essay because this is not reality. It took me many years to understand that it was not my fault. I had no control. Is it scary to not have control? Yes. It was not my fault. Nothing of this was my fault. I did the best that I could with the best that I had. And these essay situations were unavoidable because they were not my fault, right? And it took me many years to be comfortable with that idea and to give myself that forgiveness. But at the time, this is how I saw it. I deserved to go through that because I hurt my best friend, because I cheated on my best friend, right? And this story basically replicates itself through many years of my life. This story of friends that is dating a guy, I'm obsessed with a guy, I get essayed. This cycle replicates so many times in my life, and I go through more and more of this. And this story is kind of to show how trauma works, the patterns of behavior, like the feelings and emotions that we have around it. Because I think my guilt really added for me to being to endure a lot of traumatic situations, to normalize also a lot of traumatic situations. But I mean, not only my guilt, like I was roomed, like even without the guilt, I was roomed. But I think the guilt within me really made me unconsciously being put in a lot of situations that's not being put, enduring, staying. Because again, I don't have control for like what happens to me now. Did I stay in a lot of toxic situations because I thought I deserved it? Yes. Did I saw the signs and I did not leave future situations? Absolutely. But again, it's outside of my control, right? A lot of it was outside of my control, and I think the guilt here is really just a way to cope with these experiences, to say, hey, maybe you had some control, maybe this won't happen again because you had control, right? You could have stopped it. Because me saying that I could have stopped it gives me safety and gives me control in a reality that I had no control. And this was just happening to me, and it was unavoidable because Yeah, it was outside of my control. But this is basically my first love story. Again, love quotations, trauma. And this pattern of falling in love and being essayed continues for many years. And the only way that I set myself free was by looking at it, facing it, forgiving myself and understanding that I had no control, that this will happen to me either way, because it was out of my control. There was nothing I could have done to stop this, right? And it took a lot of years of going through this to realize that. I think the biggest lesson in being essays that I needed to learn is that it's outside my control and it's not my fault. It's not for what I say, what I dress, for who I am. It's the people that essayed me fault. It's not my fault, right? And this was really hard to learn and to realize, because it's scary, right? Because saying that it's not my fault is basically saying that this can happen at any time because I have no control. But that's just life, right? The only thing I've control over is how I support myself during it. And now I am there for myself doing it, right? Yeah. Like imagine this first story was for many years very hard for me to face, very hard for me to tell, to speak about. But because I faced so much of this pattern, I faced so much of this, I'm kind of better at telling this story. For example, my father rooming me is something that I never told anyone really. So it was hard for me to, not even that I told anybody, that I admitted to myself. I think the most important thing is admitting to yourself. But in the last episode, I think I got more emotional because this is something that I have admitted to myself, but not a lot. And I think this essay, because it brought me a lot of trauma and a lot of dangerous and traumatizing experiences, I faced a lot of it already, and I faced a lot of the fear, the pain, the trauma. So it's easier for me to talk about it because I faced it in my life already. But this first time, my first love, basically, this cycle mimics a lot of times, but most importantly, free times. I also like the being free is also, I think, very interesting. And this is really a story for me. I'm going to tell the next episodes to explain. But this is a story that really exemplifies to me how trauma works, how the unconscious mind works, how pain works, of all of these things that you ignore replicate in your life. And the only way to set free from it is to really face it and feel it and let go of it, right? But the thing of being SA'd, I think, is also very generational trauma. I think a lot of people in my family, I don't know for sure a lot of people, but I must be generational trauma, like my father rooming me. Something must have happened to him, right? Like, I think this was something that always bound to happen to me. Again, I have no control over it, right? I think this is something that I always had to go through because of generational trauma. I think in a lot of ways, what our family does not process, it happens to us. What our family does not deal, we go through similar patterns of behavior, right? And I think that's the power of trauma. That's the power of pain. And that's why I put so much emphasis in feeling emotions and not denying pain and embracing pain, because I think like that's the only way to be set free from it. And I told this story, imagine, because I already faced this story a lot in my life, and I already faced these memories and felt these emotions so much in my life. It was not that hard for me to tell, but I still feel a lot of shame, a lot of guilt. I'm sorry to the girl that I hurt. I'm sorry for that. And this story is really not to bring shame to anyone, because also the people involved in this story, for them to be doing this behavior, being a teenagers, if they were adults, I think that's different. But they were kids, they were teenagers, right? I think they also must have been, I don't know. And even if I knew, I wouldn't say, right? Because it's not my story to tell. I'm just sharing what, you know, it portrays to me and to me only. Of course, like by sharing what it portrays to me, I have to share a bit of others because it is what they've done to me. But I don't blame them. I don't. I don't. Was it hurtful? Yes. Did it traumatize me? Yes. Was it s.a'd? Absolutely. But I don't put that much blame on them because they were also children, right? And for them to do this behavior, I'm assuming, is also trauma on their part. I don't know what they've been through, but for this to be a normal behavior, I can only speak for myself. But yeah, like I can only assume they also must have been through a lot in life, right? So this is not to bring shame or point fingers, really. If they were adults, it would be different, but they were kids. They were teenagers that were probably mimicking behavior that I don't know their life, I don't know what they've been through. And I bring the same grace to myself and to them, because also there is no point in blaming them, right? Again, if they're adults, that's different. But as kids, there is no point in blaming them, right? We were just doing the best that we could with the best that we had. And all we had, most of us, was trauma, right? So, yeah, this is the first part. I'm going to tell the other parts in my next podcast episodes. And yes, this mimicked a lot of times in my life until I learned the lesson. Damn. And yeah, what I'm grateful, people. I'm grateful that I got a job. So grateful for it. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you for everyone that sent me good energy. I appreciate that. Because I got a new job, I think my scheduling videos is going to change a bit. I think I'm going to do, like before I was doing a long video about healing and the podcast episode, at least I tried every week. Right now, I think I'm going to do 1 week podcast, next week video about healing in Laurinda. So my schedule is changing a bit, but I'm going to still try to post regularly for you guys and for myself. But I'm grateful that I got a job. I'm grateful that I told this story, even though a lot of shame and a lot of guilt. Again, I try to bring grace to myself because I was a kid, like, yeah. But I still feel a lot of guilt and I still feel a lot of shame, especially to what I did to my best friend. I still carry that guilt. I still carry that shame, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry for what happened. And this is a story that I was shameful and unable to face during many years, and I'm grateful that I reached a point that I faced this story. It's a part of me, is a part of who I am, and this actually greatly shaped me and taught me a lot of hard lessons to learn. And it was not easy to go through at all. I'm grateful that I reached a point that it's easier for me to be okay with this type of stuff. because this really went sent me to hell. Like I really was stuck in a lot of toxic cyclical behavior with a lot of different people, and I'm grateful that I'm not anymore. I'm grateful that I'm not no longer s.a'd, because I was s.a'd so many times after this, like week after week something will happen. Hell, traumatizing. I'm so grateful that I reached a point in my life where I have consent over my body and I have agency over my body. I'm not longer essayed. I'm not longer touched without consent and all of that. I'm grateful that I could share this story, that I'm here sharing my story. I'm grateful that I set myself from guilt and from shame about it. And I'm grateful that I learned that it was not my fault. I'm grateful that I learned that I had no control over it. And I'm not the one to blame here. And in this story specifically, I don't feel like no one was to blame because we're all kids. We did not know any better, right? I think the people to blame are probably the adults around all of us. But again, I don't see much point in blaming, especially in this situation, right? But yeah, thank you so much for listening. I appreciate all of you that can listen to this. And it's really funny because I got a comment of someone that was scared to listen to my last episode. And I also understand that, I do understand. I completely understand that point of view. And also, I appreciate the empathy because that shows a lot of compassion and empathy. And these episodes is really like only if you want to and can mentally listen to it. You don't have to listen to it when you are not feeling the most, yeah, mentally prepared. That's the reason why also I never shared these stories with people is because I almost feel bad for the people that are listening to this story, because my life story, it's something that it is me. I need to do it for myself, and I need to do it also for people that have went through similar stuff and find solace in me sharing this story. But there are a lot of other people that did not went through this, and it's very traumatizing to show this reality, right? And a big reason why I didn't tell people my life story is because it's traumatizing. It's traumatizing for me to tell people. You feel me? Like, I think for me it's freeing to say, and for me it does me good for my mental health. But I completely understand that for the people it's traumatizing. I completely understand. I'm that person. If a story is like too overwhelming for me, I cannot take it. Like, I need to put boundaries with myself. So I do understand everyone that cannot listen to my podcast, doesn't feel mentally prepared, and I understand, I appreciate, and thank you for having empathy, and thank you for having that level of compassion, because that's what it shows. It shows empathy and compassion, right? And at the same time, I do appreciate everyone that has the strength to listen to my podcast. And for everyone that resonates with my message, I send you a lot of love, healing, and support. You are not alone. It is not your fault. And we don't have choice over the bad things that happen to us, but we have the choice to be there for ourselves and to love ourselves through everything that has happened to us, and to accept ourselves through everything that we are. So yeah, thank you so much for listening. I hope you have a good night, good night or good day whenever you're listening. Bye.